It's the Real News Network. I'm Sharmini Perez coming to you from Baltimore. There are 1 million solar installations online in the U.S. While that is a significant number, it also represents only 1% of energy used in the country. The good news is that with new, cheaper solar costs, the sector is growing and job growth in this sector is becoming enormous. The question is, can we expedite this sector to effectively combat climate change, and who or what is standing in the way? On to discuss this is Angelina Galiteva. She's joining us from Huntington Beach, California. She's the founder and chair of the board of Renewables 100 Policy Institute, and she also serves on the board of the California Independent Systems Operator. Angelina instituted LA's solar power program, which has become the largest and fastest growing urban solar program in the United States. Good to have you with us, Angelina.
Good to be here. Thank you, Sharmini.
And here at The Real News, we've been covering the environment and climate change crisis for a long time. And rarely do we get to do good news stories like this. So thanks for making that possible, Angelina.
You're very welcome.
So, Angelina, recently the Republican mayor of San Diego announced a commitment to transition to 100% renewable energy by 2035. Is this a trend we are going to see around the country?
I'm hoping it is. San Diego certainly is positioned to transition to 100% renewables as a city. It is interconnected to a wider grid. So San Diego supplying 100% of what they use is a possibility with distributed generation, such as solar, of course, and rooftop solar is growing exponentially around the state, and other renewables which can be brought in through the transmission lines via the independent system operator. So certainly a goal of 100% energy of what the city uses is a possibility. It's also a goal that another Republican mayor has instituted in California as well. Mayor Rex Paris in the city of Lancaster has decided that renewables are the future. And he actually has gone a step further, mandating that each new home constructed in the city of Lancaster should have at least 1 to 2 kilowatts of solar installed on the roof to begin with. And they have policies supporting renewable energy. They've created a CCA, which is a community choice aggregator, which allows for them to purchase additional renewable energy from the grid as well. And the city is actually cleaner, much more efficient, with a better quality of life, and running more economically because renewables are now cheaper. So yes, it would be the imperative of climate that drives the technology when it was expensive and we needed buy-down programs. But now that it's become the cheapest alternative, why not have it as a mandate where each new home and each new construction is zero net energy right from the beginning? And I think that's a trend we're going to see.
And certainly, I hope the Republican Party take note of this, because for so long they have stood in the way of growing the renewable energy sector, and even to the point of becoming climate skeptics. But I hope this trend keeps up.
I hope so too. And they can be skeptics all they want. That's fine and dandy. But when it's the lowest cost alternative and when it makes economic sense, and when it's also tied into energy independence to boot and job creation, it's a non-partisan issue. Everybody should be behind it.
Right. And so when it comes to solar energy, to make a significant difference to our climate, we must have large-scale expansion of the programs that you've been initiating and driving. The solar business projects on rooftops and so on that we talked about earlier, can that be exponential and really grow into a large-scale economy? And how do you see that taking place?
Certainly, it can be a large-scale economy. I mean, just to put it in perspective, the solar industry in California right now employs more people than the 3 largest utilities combined. So it's certainly a job creator. It's also not only distributed energy, which is what we see on rooftops and as we develop reconstructing homes, and new constructions should certainly incorporate solar energy as part of the building envelope, crisscrossing into the building sector. But we can also look at other sectors that traditionally have not been associated with solar and would boost the solar industry, such as the transportation sector. People are going to have batteries to charge. And what would make you more independent than creating your own energy to power your home and creating your own energy to power your car, having batteries that actually provide storage in case there is some kind of an emergency or a natural disaster? It allows people to control their own energy destiny. This is the ultimate power to the people solution. So when we combine the distributed nature of solar, because it can be as small as powering your calculator, powering your home, powering your car, powering your community, powering your computer, your internet, and all the kids around the world that currently have no access to education can have education via solar power and tablets. So wireless electricity, wireless telecommunications are certainly the future on a distributed basis, but on a centralized basis as well. Having large-scale solar installations powering the bulk of our energy needs and displacing centralized power station is very, very critical. And not just solar, wind can do it as well. And point in case, Berkshire Hathaway, one of the larger energy providers in the United States, Berkshire Hathaway Energy, recently announced about a week ago that they're going to be transitioning all of their mid-American customers, that's a company they own, to 100% renewable energy powered by wind in Iowa. Not in California, but in Iowa. They also just flipped the switch about 2 months ago on the largest solar project in the world here in California as part of California's renewable portfolio standard, which is now 50% by 2030, which does not include rooftop solar and does not include large-scale hydro, effectively making it 65 to 70% renewable energy goal, which is a substantial goal when you come to think of it. A state of California, which is the sixth or seventh largest economy in the world, transitioning to a majority of renewable energy and doing it efficiently through an optimized system and at a lower cost. It's a huge story that the rest of the world is looking at and trying to follow and figure out the most efficient ways to transition for the benefit of the environment, of course, greenhouse gases, but for an economic benefit as well, which is a twofer, and that's a good story.
Right. And Angelina, but other utility companies are being resistant to this kind of a transition, particularly into solar and wind energy. What is that about, especially as solar has become cheaper, as you said?
Well, it takes time to transition, and the utility industries, the energy industry has been the same without too many changes for the last 50, 100 years. It's been a one-way street. We generate electricity in a centralized way, mostly with fossil fuel. You, the ratepayer, because we aren't customers until recently, buy the electricity at whatever price we tell you because that's the price that we sell. You don't have much of a voice in the matter. The game is changing, and it's changing very quickly in an environment that utilities are not used to dealing with in such a speedy fashion. Some of them, of course, are acclimating faster. Some are taking a little bit longer to figure out how is it that we make money, or how is it that we survive in this new environment and paradigm shift. Should we be owning the car batteries, for instance, because we are the supplier of electricity for cars? Should we be owning charging infrastructure? Should we be owning the solar system on everybody's roof? Could we be the service provider instead of just providing kilowatt hours? How do we make sure that energy efficiency is also a part of the mix? Because nothing is more valuable than a kilowatt hour saved. So utilities need to figure out how they're going to start working in industries and breaking down silos that haven't been broken before. We need to be able to see all the way into the customer's meter, and that customer is going to be able to control a very empowered home. The customer is going to be able to follow load signals in terms of crank up your air conditioner or crank down your air conditioner, charge your car, do your laundry at a certain time. And the customer should derive some kind of a benefit for following the instructions of a utility or a service provider. So it's going to be a very dynamic change. It's going to be a very empowering change for all of the customers and consumers. Consumers are indeed going to become producers of energy, making them prosumers. And we're all going to have to figure out how we play in that new energy field. I think it's incredibly exciting. I think the utilities are going to figure out a way how they can survive and what their best portfolio is going to be. It will take a little time. There will be some resistance, but it will change. The industry is certainly headed in that direction, and I don't see it turning back again.
Now, the utility companies and the private sector involved in the utility companies always need incentives. And first of all, I want to ask you whether you're in favor of such incentives. And so should the federal government, for example, get in on decarbonizing the environment and provide incentives, and what would that look like if you are in favor of it? Because especially we have to now meet the Paris climate change agreement.
I'm actually in favor of incentives. I've always been in favor of incentives. What I'm not necessarily in favor of is subsidies. The difference between incentives and subsidies never go away. We've been subsidizing the fossil industry since its existence. And we've been incorporating the costs of the fossil industry through healthcare and through quality of life and through water quality and air quality. And so we don't see the true cost of a dirty kilowatt hour produced necessarily in one place. Incentivizing a technology such as renewables, which was successfully done through renewable portfolio standards, was successfully done through the investment tax credits, have actually been reduced over time. And they've been reduced by more than 80-90%, in most cases actually disappearing. But the costs have come down dramatically too. So now this is a cost-effective, commercially available industry that does not need incentivizing anymore. If we're to meet the goals of Paris, we're going to need to incentivize technologies that enable a greater percentage of renewables to come on the grid, such as storage, for instance. With battery technology and advanced battery technologies, we're not at the point of where it's considered cost-effective yet. It may be in certain applications, but not throughout the system. So we're going to have to figure out, and we've all gotten really much better at it, how do we incentivize these technologies and very, very quickly bring down the cost, because we've created a market, we've created a signal, we've provided an environment for investors that is secure, that they can invest in, and that we can have a technological solution that benefits renewables and allows them to reach that 50, 60, 70, 80, and ultimately 100% goal of supplying our power. So yes, we're going to have to do it. It's going to have to be driven by the belief that these technological costs can come down, and they will. We're seeing that happen in California with the 1,300 megawatts energy storage program that was rolled out by the California Public Utilities Commission. And we're going to have to stick with it and, for the benefit of everybody in the world, reduce the cost of storage so that 60, 70, 80, 100% renewable portfolio standards or overall goals become the norm and not the exception.
These renewable portfolio standards you're talking about, what are they? How does it work?
The renewable portfolio standards are goals. You can either have a feed-in tariff, which is what Europe had, which is we're going to pay you a certain amount per every kilowatt hour generated by renewables, or you can have a renewable portfolio standard, which is a percentage standard, such as what we have in California and most of the states in the United States, of how much renewables you're going to have as part of your energy mix. So for California, initially it was 10%, then 20%, then 33%, now 50% by 2030. So as we've learned more about the technologies, as costs have come down, as we've gotten better at incorporating them on a multitude of levels, those percentages have steadily increased, the incentives have decreased, and we're seeing that solar and wind generators are now some of your lowest cost providers, and that's why utilities and developers are investing in such technologies.
And last question to you, Angelina. Do you see 100% renewable energy happening anytime in the near future?
It better happen. I mean, everybody's calling for action on 100% renewable energy. It's not an issue of if, it's an issue of when. And some people argue, they say it can happen by 2030, 2035, 2050, or 2100. And depending on where you are, that and the scope that you're looking at, that may or may not be doable. If you're a small village in sub-Saharan Africa and you have no energy right now, you can be 100% renewable powered in a matter of a couple of months with a microgrid, some solar energy, a couple of wind turbines, some storage, and you can even have small industries and educational institutions springing up. As you need to power industries that come in online, you're going to have to decide, if I'm a country that already have a power system, which power plants am I going to retire? How am I going to replace it? And if I'm going to be growing my renewable energy footprint, how do I do that efficiently without stranded assets that people are going to try to figure out who pays for them? So it's actually a planning process. And I think whether you're small and planning for the next couple of months to a year, or whether you're larger, you need to be planning with the long end game in mind. So planning 5 years ahead isn't necessarily enough for a state like California or the region of the West or a larger country. You need to be planning 15, 20 years ahead, and how you replace the energy that you have right now and the portfolio that you're relying on with resources that we are now gaining more experience with, which are very reliable, such as solar and wind. We know the sun is going to shine and the wind is going to blow, but they are intermittent. So we need to make sure that we incorporate them in our system. We've got the adequate technology to balance them, and we're able to bring on a very reliable, robust, low-cost, emission-free solution for the industrial as well as the residential and commercial sectors. And I think that can be done. It's an issue of planning. It's an issue of some new technological innovation down the road. But as we're going to 20, 30, 40, and 60% mostly, the infrastructure that we have in place right now can be optimized to meet that goal.
Angelina, I thank you so much for joining us today. That was very informative, and we hope to have you back very soon.
Anytime. And just to mention, if you want to have more information on who's going to 100%, what the goals are, and what the timelines are, go to renewables100.org, and you'll be able to click on an interactive map that will show you the status.
That's excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.